Hello, fellow rebel capitalists. Hope you're well. Have some breaking news on the housing market. Let's go straight into this article from CNBC. Sales of newly built homes tank as affordability hits buyers. And I think this gal, out of all the people at CNBC, this gal is one of my favorites, Diane Olick. She's Why? Because she just seems to be straight and just straightforward. I think is the words I'm looking for. Straightforward. She just doesn't get into the whole woke propaganda. It's just kind of just facts. This is the housing market. This is what's going on. It is what it is. So moving on, the key points. November new home sales were down 14% from a year ago. And this makes a lot of sense to me. Even driving around Phoenix, you see the only homes being built are McMansions. That's pretty much it. And there's no starter homes being built. There's no 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot homes. There's townhomes, there's condominiums, there's apartments being built, but there isn't this single family home with a backyard, a front yard. It's like those aren't being built, the starter homes at 1,500 square foot or a low price point. Why? Because the costs have gone up so much, labor costs, the lack of land or the price of the land, the red tape, the bureaucracy, to a point where the builders can't make a profit on a house that's under, here in Phoenix, probably 500,000. And so what do you see? You see all of the homes being built are these $1 million homes up in Scottsdale. Like, you drive around Phoenix, you go to areas where there is some land they could build there, and there's nothing. But you go up into North Scottsdale, and it's like boomtown. There's new subdivisions being built like on every corner, and these houses are huge, relatively speaking. I mean, I would say probably at least 3,000 square feet. And again, why is this? Because those are the only homes that builders can buy and actually make a profit. So new buyers running into affordability issues, that makes a lot of sense, especially if the stimmy checks have run out and interest rates aren't really continuing to go down. If anything, they might start going up, and we'll address that here in a moment. But this is exactly what I am seeing anecdotally at a local level here. The median price of a newly built home sold in November rose by nearly 20% from November 2020, despite rising mortgage rates. A hefty correction appears to be due, wrote Ian Shepherdson, chief economist at Pantheon Microeconomics, in a note to investors. Still, inventory of existing homes is at a historic low. Right, but I would say there's a lot of nuance there. So are you combining the starter homes with the McMansions? Because the lack of inventory at the starter home level could be skewing the numbers, right? So let's say that we've got 10 homes available, but 9 of them are McMansions and one of them is a single family home. And you say, well, the inventory is low. Well, for starter homes it is, but not for McMansions. So maybe there's something there within the numbers. Let's see if we can get in some more detail. And here's the exact quote from this economist at Pantheon Macroeconomics. A hefty correction appears to be due, but the rapid increase in existing home prices, inventory in that market is only 1/3 the level in the new home market relative to sales, is putting upward pressure on new home prices. Okay, a hefty correction appears to be due, but the rapid increase in existing home prices is putting extra upward pressure on new home prices. So what is this guy saying? The rapid increase in existing home prices is putting upward pressure on new home prices. Oh, maybe the rapid increase in existing homes is also putting upward pressure on new homes. Okay, so that's the part I'm missing there. And then he's saying uh, inventory in the market is only 1/3 the level in the new home market relative to sales. Okay, I got it. Got it. I'm sure you guys were probably following that. I wasn't, so I apologize there. And moving on down the article, new home prices are soaring because there's so little available on the resale market, but more because of rising material costs. Okay, so maybe they have parsed through the data, and it is actually the fact that there are very few new homes for sale in addition to these existing starter homes. They say one of the reasons why the home prices have gone up so much for these new homes is the rising cost for materials and builders. They're passing those costs on to buyers. Thank you very much, central planners. And people say, well, George, it's a result of the cerveza sickness. Oh, it's not. This is a result of the government's response to the cerveza sickness. You can just go back just to 2019 and just assume we never would have had the lockdowns. We never would have forced small and mid-sized businesses to shut their doors. We never would have had these draconian measures. We never would have had the $5 trillion in deficit spending. Therefore, this parabolic rise in crypto and in the stock market and all of these components that allow people to retire early, maybe that create this labor shortage, that create a shortage in the supply of goods, that go into materials for building homes. And then you have all of these government economic distortions that create even more shortages, that create higher consumer price inflation. If none of this would have happened, can we honestly say that the prices, their input costs for these homes would be the same? Absolutely not. They would most likely be much, much, much lower. And therefore, the cost of these new homes would be lower. So, what's my point? My point is at the end of the day, the new home buyers, which would be the average Joe and Jane, is paying for the economic distortions created by the government in their response to the cerveza sickness. So, putting the housing market to the side and going back to freedom and liberty and cost benefit analysis, when people like in Australia, as an example, or here in the United States in 2020, or what they're doing in Europe, when you're going into lockdown, you're saying, okay, it's going to save X amount of lives. Okay, I get it. We need to quantify that, but let's analyze the costs as well. And we're seeing these costs and these unintended consequences play out in the housing market today. The knock-on effects, the unintended consequences from all of this government intervention and the economic distortions created by that government intervention throughout 2020. So, for my viewers in Australia and in Europe, I'm sorry to break the news to you, but your governments currently are creating even more economic distortions that your poor middle class average Joe and Jane that will be paying for, not just in 2022, but most likely in years, potentially decades to come. Back to the housing market here in the United States. After peaking last spring and falling dramatically over the summer, the cost of lumber is now on the rise. I didn't know that either. I knew that it peaked, that it shot right up and came back down, but I didn't know it was on the rise again. Its price is now double what it was at the start of November. Wow. When the U.S. Commerce Department announced it would double import duties on Canadian lumber in 2022. I did not know that they were doing that. What? Why? Okay. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole in this video, but maybe that's going to be a good video next week. Why on earth would the U.S. Commerce Department double import duties on Canadian lumber? So it's probably this argument that they're trying to increase U.S. jobs, and therefore they're going to put tariffs on all the lumber coming in or increase the tariffs. And this is somehow this kind of protectionist type of economic vision that a lot of central planners have, where it doesn't really create any more jobs. If that's the intention, but the result is it usually doesn't create any more jobs, but it just increases the prices for everyday consumers. Usually that's the way it plays out. And I'd also like to point out that at Rebel Capitalist Live, doing a plug for Rebel Capitalist Live coming up January 7th through the 9th in Houston. You can go to rebelcapitalistlive.com to get your tickets and check out the speakers. One of the speakers is going to be my good friend, the Uneducated Economist. And I'm sure a lot of you follow his channel. If not, you should. And he actually, his side gig, believe it or not, is YouTube. His main job is he works at a lumber yard on the coast of Oregon. And so he sees all of this firsthand. And so he's going to be giving us a lot of kind of boots on the ground research intel as to what is happening with material costs for housing, and therefore maybe what's going to happen with prices moving into 2022. Let's keep going on with this article. Going into 2022, on that note, if mortgage rates continue to rise as they are expected to, buyers would have less purchasing power and be unable to afford what is for sale. That could cause builders to lower prices, or at the very least, limit how much they would raise them. While a real correction may be too strong of a prediction for now, historically, prices lag sales by about 6 months, and sales are coming down. I didn't know that fact either. So one thing I want to point out is go over to a chart. You guys hear me talk about this chart all the time. I just used it in one of my whiteboard videos. And this is the U.S. housing market adjusted for inflation. And we have a starting point at 100. This is back in 1906, but it's pretty much the same point going back to 1890. And you'll notice what happens is right about this starting point, prices were the same in the United States. We had our ups and downs, of course, but for the most part, prices were pretty much the same from the year 1900 all the way to the late 90s. And then we know what happened from there. We have all of the things that went into the GFC, the mania in the housing market, again, mostly created by the government. And this peaks out at 2006, where we are at twice the normal level. We started at 100, we get up to 200. And this isn't necessarily the price. This is just, chart giving us a reference point of 100. And then we know what happens. 6 years later, the prices bottom out very close to their historic trend line. And then they go back up, up, and up. And what we've seen since 2020 is they have gone straight up, especially in nominal terms. So what does this mean? We are now well above where we were in 2006. So I understand there's different dynamics at play, but if prices were in a bubble in 2006, how can you not argue that we're in a bubble now? Unless incomes adjusted for inflation would have gone up dramatically, which they have not. So at some point in time, this orange line is going to have to come back down. If you guys can see this little magnifying glass thing here with the plus, it's going to have to come back down to this region in here. Why does it have to come back down that way? Because the price is based on income. And if income isn't going up in real terms, then it's unless you have interest rates continue to go down. So that could happen. We could have mortgage rates go from 3 to 2 to 1 to 0 to -1, -2, -3, -10, negative, you could play that game, but once it's going to be very difficult. And I don't think in the United States we get down the probability of us getting to 0% interest rates, mortgage rates, or 1%, we'd have to have Fed funds negative. Probably not going to happen anytime soon. Therefore, the only other alternative would be if incomes adjusted for inflation actually go up at a pace that would be consistent with the level of prices. So, meaning the price to income ratio gets more realistic or more in line with what it was historically. So, or the other scenario there would be more people living in the same space. So the affordability doesn't come back in line with incomes, and therefore the amount of people crammed into the same space would have to increase. Or just you have way more homeless people. I guess that would be an option too. But I think the highest probable outcome is that this orange line goes back down into this region. That said, it doesn't necessarily have to come down in nominal prices. It could come down just adjusted for inflation. So if the nominal prices, this blue line, continue to go up at, let's say, 5% per year, but inflation is going up at 10, 20% per year, this orange line is going to start to go back down, even though the blue line is continuing to go up. And I think that's a very real possibility. But when you're thinking through the data that is being presented by articles like this on CNBC with with sales of newly built homes tanking, and is it because they are no longer affordable to buyers? And then trying to think through what might happen to prices going into 2022, I think you always have to default back and see it through the lens of this chart. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Have a fantastic holiday. And I'll probably try to crank out a few videos tomorrow morning, and then I'll try to enjoy the holiday myself. Always make sure, even during the holidays, that we're standing up for freedom, liberty, free market capitalism. We'll see you on the next video.